What's going on, Evolve Mastery family? It's your host, Princeton Clark, and I'm going to welcome you guys to this segment of Mastery 360. And today, guys, I have a very special guest. Well, all of my guests are very special, but today I'm going to be sitting down with my good friend, Renee Marino, and I want to introduce you guys to her a little bit before we dive into the interview that I had with her. But just to let you guys know who she is, Renee is a professional communication coach named by Yahoo Finance as one of the top communication coaches in 2021 to follow. And she's in the top 10, guys, one of the best. And I'm really excited to have this conversation. She was also the co-host of Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi's first ever Virtual World Summit, and has spoken, performed, and been interviewed on thousands of live and virtual stages, including the Dean Graziosi podcast, The Dean Graziosi Show. Her first published book, Becoming a Master Communicator, will be on bookshelves January 25th of 2022 and is available now for pre-order. But guys, she's so amazing because she helps people create genuine connections in their lives and business by balancing new school technology with old school simplicity. And she also uses her well-rounded experience of communicating through various mediums to train companies, organizations, schools, and universities in strengthening their communication skills. Guys, there is so much more that I could tell you about Renee, but I think it's better to let Renee tell you herself. So we're going to go ahead and dive into this interview, but I hope you guys enjoy her as much as I did. And guys, let's continue to evolve. Let's continue to step into mastery. Let's go ahead and dive into this interview. And I hope you guys get a lot out of it. All right, what's going on, everybody? I'm really excited to have this conversation with you guys today on the Mastery 360 segment of the Evolve Mastery podcast. I'm your host, Princeton Clark, and as I stated prior to coming into this podcast, I have a very special individual with me today, and I've had the pleasure of watching her journey and watching her evolve, but I only knew part of her story, and there's so much more there. But without further ado, guys, I want to introduce you all to Renee Marino. Actually, let me do that again.
Okay, no worries.
I don't like editing.
I know.
All right.
It's so funny. Many people have gotten tripped up on my name. And I think even though it's so simple, it's I guess it could be a tongue twister. So you're all good. Mm-hmm. You're good.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys. So here we are, ready for today's podcast interview with Renee Marino. And I'm really excited, guys, because I've had an opportunity to get to know this beautiful soul and watch part of her journey unfold as she's stepping into so much newness. And as you guys know, the Mastery 360 segment of the Evolve Mastery podcast is about interviewing different people from different walks of life who have had to master specific areas of their life personally, professionally, spiritually to get to where they are now. And they come on the show to share their wisdom with you. And I want to give you access to more people who are truly living the journey of self-mastery. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you guys to my beautiful friend, Renee Marino, and we're going to get this conversation started. Renee, it's so good to have you here, dear. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. And it's been a little struggle, guys, in podcast land, us getting this podcast together. In life, we face challenges, we overcome obstacles, but we got to continue to push forward. And I told Renee prior to coming on this episode today that, this was something that typically happens, and I feel like it challenges me to push forward. It challenges me and tests my resolve. And Renee, you know a lot about resolve. You've had to find a lot of resolve, in your life on your journey. But to start out, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself and let all of the guests in podcast land know, who is Renee Marino?
Oh, I love it. Yes, this will be my pleasure. Well, I am born and raised Jersey girl. Born into a wonderful family. My mom, my dad, my grandmother, my brother, we were in a household, Princeton, of pure love. And I like to start with this because everything comes from our foundation, right? It's like a house is built on a foundation and then you just, it builds from there. So for me, my foundation was in my house with my lovely family. And all I can remember is sitting around the kitchen table, you know, Italian Americans, we love to eat, we love to talk. And that's what it was, sitting around the kitchen table together, laughing, always eating, arguing, but nonetheless communicating and connecting. And the more I move throughout my life, especially now as a professional communication coach, I think back to my foundation a lot every day. And I realize this is why I've been so obsessed with communication and understanding why people connect in the way they do and how they communicate with one another and how we can use communication to be our greatest tool to success. So that's really the beginning of it all. And from the time I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a professional performer. I started dance class, singing lessons, doing community theater. And right off the bat, Princeton, I knew that this was a part of me. Oftentimes I get asked, like, when was the moment that you knew that you wanted to be on Broadway and you wanted to be a performer? And I always say it's interesting because I don't remember one moment that was like this aha moment. And I was like, wait a minute, I want to do this. It always just felt a part of who I was. So I just put one foot in front of the other and worked my butt off to make that dream come true of being on Broadway. And for all of the listeners out there, I don't know if you know too much about the performing industry or the world of Broadway, but it is no joke. And it can be a really tough field because a lot of it depends on what they need at that moment. So I could be the best dancer, singer, actor in the room, but if they need a woman who's 5'10", I'm not getting the job, right? Like I'm 5'2", Miss Petite. So no matter how great I am, I'm not going to get that job. So if you don't have a really great, again, I'm going to use this word all throughout our interview, but foundation, if you are not grounded, your feet on the earth, knowing who you are and what you bring to the world, it can be really easy to get into your own head and take those rejections personally. So throughout this career and really moving along my path in the career, I had to learn to develop what we call a thick skin. And no matter how many times they told me, no, Renee, you're not tall enough. Renee, you look too Italian. Renee, your hair's too dark. I had to go deeper within myself and know, okay, that's not representative of who I am or what or in what way I can serve the world. Keep moving forward, Renee, keep moving forward. And let's get real here, everybody, right? Because we're all about evolving, and you can't evolve unless you're honest. I had many a days freaking crying in my bed, telling my mom, like, what am I doing, right? Am I not good enough? So just because I learned to develop a thick skin doesn't mean that it wasn't through trials and tribulations. That is how we develop. That is how we evolve. And the older I get now, after being a professional actor, singer, dancer for over 16 years on Broadway and TV and film, now being in this new incredible world of the knowledge industry and helping people to communicate authentically on camera and off, I realize that the jewels and the parts of ourselves that we want to hide the most are the parts that connect us with each other the most. And if we can, like you said at the beginning of this interview, if we can learn to let what appears as issues and problems, if we can keep letting them propel us forward and learn the lesson, man, oh man, we are going to go from that caterpillar to the butterfly faster than we could ever imagine.
Yes. And you've definitely done that, and that's what I love about you is the not only the tenacity that you have and how you show up, how you speak, the energy that you bring, because it's also about like you said, the foundation. If you didn't have the foundation, you wouldn't be able to move with such tenacity. You wouldn't be able to move with a deeper level of faith to propel you forward because you'd be too busy doubting yourself. And let's face it, we doubt ourselves from time to time. It comes up. anytime we're stepping into something new, because it's an opportunity to grow, but you seize those opportunities to grow. You jump into it, head first, and you're like, I'm here to do something amazing, and I'm not going to let anybody tell me no. Even though I've heard no so much, it's only opened other doors. It's like the saying, when one door shuts, another one opens. And, I'd love to dive into that a little bit. You heard no a lot in that industry. How do you think it helped you to develop your voice? When we talk about communicating what you want and really speaking in a way that honors that desired result, how did hearing no and growing in that industry help you to develop your voice?
Princeton, it's like Rocky Balboa, right? He says it's not how many times you get hit, it's how many times you get hit and get back on your feet and keep going back for more. Mm-hmm. That is what develops. It's like, picture the calluses on your hands, right? When you're working out at the gym, oh, damn, it hurts at first. You're like, screw this shit, I'm done. But the more you push through, the more you keep going, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm now, lifting however many pounds. And 2 months ago, I never even dreamed this was possible. And it's the same with hearing no. I really believe we develop the most when we are outside of our comfort zones, Princeton. And, it can sound cliche, but cliches are only what they are because the original source they came from are so spot on, right? That's why people are like, that's a cliche. I'm like, yeah, but where did that cliche originate from? It's only repeated all over the world so often because that original source that cliche developed from is so spot on. And when we are outside our comfort zone, when someone says to you, nah, Princeton, you know what? I don't like what you're doing. This evolved mastery. And you're like, wait, hold on. Am I getting some criticism? You can go two ways with it. You can let your ego take lead and say, I don't know who you think you are, but I know what I'm doing. Or you could step back, right? Take a step back. And I'm going to refer to a mutual friend of ours who actually, she's going to be on my summit, Miss Lolita E. Walker.
Yes.
Who talks about the power of the pause. I want to give credit to her where credit's due. It's that power of the pause to step back and say, all right, this feedback I'm getting, it doesn't feel good, but is there anything I could take away from this? Is there any golden nugget of information here that I could use to propel me forward? And when you flip the script in your head like that, all of a sudden, everything that could be a jab to you becomes a gift. And all those years I got no's at first, Princeton, yes, it's hard. It's so hard when it's so personal. So personal. Yeah, Renee, your voice is good. I literally got told this. This is a hilarious story. When I was like 12 years old, I got cast in this all girls singing group, okay, called Just Girls. So creative. And they chose me as one of their lead singers. And we're at the first day of rehearsal. I'm all excited, right? I'm in New York City. My parents are waiting in the waiting room. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a lead singer. And I start singing the song, which is called Girl Gone Bad. And it was like, she's a girl gone bad, met a boy now, she's been had. So I'm singing the song, right? And they're like, okay, Renee, can you make it like not sound as pretty? And I'm like, now talk about like confusion. I'm like, I have spent now years on voice lessons, right? My poor parents spending all their hard-earned money on voice lessons. And you want me to make it sound worse? And they're like, yeah, it sounds too polished. And I'm like, what? So like at that moment, I'm only 12 years old. It was weird for me because I'm like, of course I take it as like a criticism. And I go home that night and I'm talking to my dad and he's like, what's the matter? What's going on? And I told him, I was like, I'm just uncomfortable with this. Like, I don't know how to change my voice, right? That's my voice. And it was the first lesson ever, Princeton, for me in staying true to exactly who you are. Now, that piece of feedback from them was great for me because at first I wanted to resist it. But after I took a second and I reflected on how it made me feel, what I didn't like about it most was that they were trying to make me something I wasn't. They wanted me to look older. There were other things that they were telling me to do. And I went home feeling uncomfortable. And that was the first lesson in my life at 12 years old of being true to who you are and feeling in your gut what feels right. And after that, I decided not to move forward with the group. And it was the biggest blessing ever because it was the first time I stayed true to myself. I listened to my gut. I communicated with my dad, who was my support system. And I realized, oh, you know what? This just isn't for me. I need to go where someone appreciates my voice, whether it's too pretty or too polished. And that is more for me. So that really is the trick. It's flipping that script in your brain and saying, how can this be for me? And that doesn't always mean that the rejection you get and how it's put forth to you is going to be well received. But when you take that pause, you can say, okay, how can I use this to make me grow?
Mm-hmm. I love that answer. And, it made me think about something. I was listening to Dr. Myron Golden, and he was talking about when you're doing the work, when you're growing, when you're taking the steps forward. So many times you hear people say, it's not working, and he said, whatever you work by the very nature of what it is moving and working something. Whenever you're working something, it's either working on you or it's working for you. And you're moving forward. And that's what you were able to see at an early age. And even throughout your career is, like you said, when you have that foundation to be able to take a step back and to be the observer instead of the reactor in a situation, you get to ask yourself questions like, what is this working on in me? And how is it working for me? And I think when we can ask those two questions as we've established or are establishing our foundation, it helps give us more clarity. It also helps give us more peace when taking those faithful steps moving forward, because let's be honest, the vision isn't always clear as we want it to be. And sometimes in taking those steps, when it's working on us, it's bringing stuff from underneath the surface. It's bringing up that imposter syndrome. It's bringing up that fear. It's bringing up any inkling of doubt that may be there, because divinely we are being led in a way to evolve into a fuller version, a more aware version of ourselves, and clearly you've taken this journey, but like everybody on their journey, who's had to be worked on so that their gifts could work for them, you've had to face some challenges personally as well as professionally. And I'd like to know, what do you feel is one of the greatest challenges you've had to face? And what was the lesson that you feel? And I know that's probably really hard to narrow down in a life where you've been so expressive for most of your life, but if you could say, one thing really challenged you and it brought you the greatest gift of wisdom, what would that be?
Oof. Princeton, this last year and a half was one of the most difficult of my entire existence. I lost my father, who, as you can tell, just the little bit I've shared, he was the greatest man I've ever known. He was the master communicator who put that seed in me to want to become a communication pioneer for the world. And I lost him. And 3 days later, I had a miscarriage. And this was all during Christmas time. And I'll never forget, I woke up, after we lost my father, December 22nd, 2019. I got to tell him that I was pregnant. First time ever, my husband and I were like, let's try, right? See what happens. I closed my last Broadway show I did, Pretty Woman. And afterwards, I knew that I was ready to pivot in my life. I started writing my book and I wanted to become a coach. And my husband and I were like, let's see what happens. And it happened. And the timing of it all, I can't even explain. It was so insane to me, because here I was about to lose my father, but about to bring a new life into the world. And I had to try to make sense of that for myself. So of course, at first look, I said to myself, all right, Renee, there's a reason. Why am I pregnant at the hardest time of my life? I don't know, but there's a reason, right? And that's where that faith comes in. And to me, right, as humans, we think we have that shit all figured out. Look, I cursed. I spelled it out before and now I cursed. So forgive me.
Hey, we are formless in this space. Let the water flow however it's going to flow, baby.
That's it. So when I first found out I was pregnant, I put in my head that, you know what, this is going to be the light at the end of the tunnel. I know my dad is struggling. His cancer had spread. But this is God's giving me this, right, to come into my life. And then when I found out 3 days later, after my dad died, that I had a miscarriage, I literally felt like I was in a nightmare. And I remember my first thought was, I have to tell my mom, who's my other best friend, that I lost someone else. Like, how is this happening? And that was the day before New Year's Eve. And I'll never forget, this is we're getting personal here, kids. All right. Cause I'm a communication coach. We have no other way to be than honest and authentic. Right. And I had to get a procedure done called a DNC. My ladies know what that is. And my doctor couldn't do it for like a week because she was going out of town and I had to perform in my friend's show. I was featured in his show for a week in New York City. And that started January 1st. So I wake up, Princeton, New Year's Eve day. And it was the first time that I think everything settled in and I realized what had happened. And I like felt like I didn't want to get out of bed. Like I literally was just like, the tears were pouring and I was like, God, what was this for? Why was I pregnant? Like I could, for me, I was like, I couldn't even have a glass of wine to like calm myself while I'm taking my dad back and forth to the doctor. I'm dealing with, getting him, this medicine and that. Like I couldn't even take a hot bath because, they say don't take hot baths when you're pregnant in the first trimester. And I was trying to make sense of it all. And I felt my feelings. That's so important, right? Step one in communication, feel what you got to feel. And I had New Year's Eve with my husband and my mom and had a great night. And then the next day I had to go freaking put fake eyelashes on, put a full face of makeup on, a beautiful gown. And I had to get on stage and sing. And not just sing, but sing my father's favorite song. And all I can say is this is where God gets you through. I have no idea how I did it, but I did it. And I think at that time when your back's up against the wall and you have nowhere else to turn but to just do, right? It's like being courageous in spite of the fear, in spite of the terror, you do it, God gets you through. And I did that for a week straight, singing every night. And then I finally got the DNC, but that caused like a slew of other things, hormones off, all this stuff. And I've been dealing with it, since. And there are days, Princeton, that I'm like, what the F is happening?
Yeah.
And in the midst of this, I'm also starting a brand new business as a coach, writing my book, literally writing this book as I'm just in this new space. It's COVID, the world shut down. I'm talking the hardest time ever. And what I've done and what I continue to do up until we started recording, when I'm feeling my feelings, I let them be felt. I talk a lot to myself. My friends, if you heard me in the car, that's my time to like talk to myself, my inner children. You're good, Renee. You're safe. It's okay, right? You've been through a lot. And I honor myself by allowing myself to have the conversation. I think the biggest problem that we face as humans is when we try to hide everything, keep pushing. It's good. Put it in the backpack, until that day comes when the backpack breaks because there's too much shit to hold. Yeah. And then we have to face it. So for myself, I've never felt in some ways more strong because my strength has been proven to me by what I've had to come through. I've never felt more scared at moments, to be quite honest. As you said before, I've been digging up so much through my grief, through my confusion, through my anger, my frustration. I am coming face to face with patterns that I've had my whole life. So it's more intense when you're face to face with them. And I'm learning to just be with those, sit with those, get to know those patterns so that they can be released. So that is what I would say is the hardest time in my life. And I feel really freaking proud of myself that I can say I'm doing it. Like I'm getting through it. I am, and not just getting through Princeton, but I'm able to do this. Like I thank you for this platform, because this is how I help other women who have gone through similar things, other men who have gone through similar things. This is how you use your story to help grow other people.
Yes. I got to take a breath on that one, man. But I want to first off say thank you for being vulnerable enough to share that with, this audience. And, I knew, part of that story, and, we had the conversation, and I remember the first time you had shared that with me, all I could think was, I can't even imagine what that pain and processing through that pain felt like. And I think this is something that, sure, men and women go through a lot of very similar things, but this is something that I think a lot of women go through. And this is why I always say women, I believe, are the most powerful creatures on this planet. They give birth to all life, and you guys harness the ability to push through things that, I remember my kid's mom, she used to make fun of me because whenever I would get sick or I get an earache, like it was like the world was coming to an end. And yes. She's like, what is wrong with you? Like, that's nothing. And she would just laugh at me, but there's a lot to be said, when it comes to being a woman in today's society, with everything that's happening right now, with women fighting just for the rights over their bodies. And that's a whole nother topic, I just want to honor you in this moment right now and give you flowers, as well as all of the women who listen to this podcast. I want to give you guys flowers because you guys have to work through things and you're experiencing things every day in your life that people in most cases have no idea you are working through. But I think it was very valuable, what you just shared, Renee, as far as really allowing yourself to feel through the pain or the emotion, the energy that you've put into motion as a result of the experiences that you are currently having, and knowing that it's okay and that it actually is a very empowering thing to do, to be able to feel through your emotions without judging them, without giving them a meaning and identifying with them in a way that you take ownership of them, but to really just process through them and observe them, and to be able to ask the question, what is this bringing to me? Like, what is this gift bringing to me? That was something that it took me a long time in my journey to really do, because I played a victim for most of my life, and for me, I didn't realize until later on that, everything that ever happened to me on my journey was a gift. And I think there's a lot of people listening right now who are facing challenges and learning how to communicate with themselves. I love how you said you talk to yourself in the car. I am my best friend. I talk to myself all the time, and it's so powerful. Even when it came to learning to become a speaker and all that, like, before I got on any stages, I would literally walk around my house. My neighbors, people probably would have thought I was crazy, but I'm speaking like I'm in a coliseum, and I'm imagining people being all around me, and I'm stepping into it, and I love how you said, if you just do it, God will get you through it. It's like, show up. We are creating our reality in every single moment. And I always say, if you never give God, source, the universe, whatever pronoun, the audience uses, if you never give it something to work with, then it has nothing to build for, and so you got to give the universe. Every time you show up, you're throwing a pebble in the pond, and that pebble is creating ripples, and those ripples go out and affect every area of your life. And so when you show up the way you chose to show up, not only did the doors open for you, in a huge way, with working with Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi, being on probably one of the biggest stages in the personal development space, but you got your book done now. And so I'd love for you to talk a little bit about first the Tony Robbins experience and how that all transitioned for you and opened up. And then let's talk about your book.
Yes. I want to bring up one point here that you just said that I think is so powerful. Like you said, if we don't show up and almost lean on God, lean on the universe, lean on whomever you look to as a higher power, how can we expect that person or being or source to help us, right? Mm-hmm. It's like it's almost like you have to ask to get. Yes. In everything. And I believe that in every part of life. And that's going to segue very nicely into the Tony Robbins world. But with that, I want to remind everybody, Wendy Mass has a beautiful quote. I put it in my book because it's one of my favorites, and it's everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about, right? So be kind. And during all of that commotion that I lived through was when I had the chance to be on a stage with Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, my mentors. Like, it's crazy that all of this was happening at the same time. And Princeton, probably before you and I actually got to speak, you didn't know that, right? You were just like, oh, this girl's cool, I like it, right? But you had no idea like what I was actually battling, what I was going through. And it's so important for all of us to remember this while we're in this world of digital technology and comparison mode and looking at everyone's photos and filters. We need to ground ourselves in that statement that everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And nobody is taking a picture of when they're crying by themselves in their room and their mascara is running down their face because they hate the way they look, or they don't love themselves, or they just had an argument with their significant other. Remember that. No one's taking a video or a reel of when they just got kicked out of their house and they have to find a place to live now, right? Like, put everything in perspective for yourself, because it's so dangerous when we live in this comparison mode, thinking that we know what another person's going through. We don't. So I just wanted to say that because I think it's so important to remember. So how did this happen? Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi. So my friends, as I'm dealing with all of this, that was January, February of 2020. I went away on vacation with my husband after performing in LA, and I saw an ad pop up with Tony and Dean, and they were talking about this new course. And I'll never forget, my husband and I put it on the calendar to come back to our room the last night of our vacation to watch. Well, we start watching. It's their course that they taught last year called the Knowledge Broker Blueprint. And at this point, I knew that I wanted to start my own business as a coach, but I didn't know how, didn't know the first step. Here I was, a professional actress my whole life. I'm like, what the hell is a business by yourself, right? I didn't know. And after watching them with Miss Jenna Kutcher, who's incredible, I was like, this is it. This is what I need. And I flew back home to New Jersey, a member of KBB. And for 6 weeks, Princeton, I woke up every day. I watched the course. I did my work. I implemented right away. And then 2 weeks later, the world shut down. So with that, what did I do? I showed up. I showed up, and I showed up fully virtually. Here we all are behind our screens. And Dean Graziosi put on a 7-day challenge called the Start Over Challenge. And every day what we had to do was show up in the Facebook group and talk about whatever the topic was for that day, limiting beliefs, what's the business we're a part of, whatever the case. And I showed up that first day, literally, you guys, completely myself, hair a mess, like makeup running. I just like finished a workout, but I got on video and I was like, all right, everybody, I'm fired up. Dean was just talking about this and that. And I just did the video. And afterwards, I get like a flood of messages. There was like 100,000 people in the group. And all these people are like, oh my goodness, how did you do that? Like, can you show me how to do that? Wow, I feel like I know you. And Princeton, I took a pause and I'm like, what are they talking about? Like, do what? Like, what am I doing? Right? So I started to realize I would do this every day. And I realized, I was like, they're talking about me being myself on video. Oh, this is something that so many people have struggles with, because number one, it's not natural. Who came out of the womb knowing how to talk to a camera? And number two, now the world shut down, so everybody has to do it. And they're asking me because this isn't easy for many people.
Yeah.
Okay, so I made that connection. But the last day of the challenge, Dean's team reached out to me and said, Dean would love to interview you live in front of the group. And I'm like, holy manoli, yeah. So Dean interviews me. I talk about my story. One of the coolest stories of my life is how I booked the role of Frankie Valli's wife in the movie Jersey Boys, directed by Clint Eastwood. That's a whole nother story if you want to get into now or another time, but basically.
Oh, you can go into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And Dean had heard a little bit of the story. So you all know I was a professional actress. I'm going to give you the highlights of this. I was doing Jersey Boys on Broadway. So I'm playing Frankie Valli's wife, Mary Delgado, and we get word that they're going to be casting for the movie. And I'll be honest with you all again, I didn't freaking think twice. I'm like, they're going to hire Marissa Tomei, some A-list actress to play my role. You know, it's in LA. They're going to hire A-list actors. Didn't think about it. And then one day I'm performing on stage, and who's 10 rows back but the legend himself, Clint Eastwood. And I'm like, oh. And in my head, I'm like, there he is. Okay. And the reason he was watching our show is because he was directing the film. So I'm like, okay, this is cool. Met him afterwards. We all took a photo. Again, didn't think anything about it until they started calling people in from our cast to audition for the film. And at this point, I'm like, this would be so cool to be a part of a movie. I've never been in a movie. So I call my agent. I'm like, listen, I'd love to get an appointment to audition. She's like, I'm on it. Now, a week later, they put out a breakdown for the role of Mary Delgado. Now, what that means in the performing world is it's basically a description of the person they're seeking. So for me, for this role, it was like sassy Jersey girl, you know, feisty first woman of Frankie Valli, you know, sassy, fun, sarcastic. So I'm like, okay, they didn't find a Mary yet. Like she's the female lead of the movie. So again, I call my agent. Hey, they put out a breakdown. She's like, I'm on it. Now it's some time's going by. All these women are getting called in for the role of Mary, and I'm not. Now, again, I remind you, I'm playing the role at the highest level you could be playing the role on Broadway. So in my head now, I'm like, again, you guys talk about getting in your head. I'm like, now, wait a second, something's up here. If I can't even get an audition for the role I'm currently playing, what are you telling me, God? Are you telling me I shouldn't be in this business? Like, what's happening? My agent calls me and she goes, so Renee, I don't know what the problem is. They won't see you for Mary, but they'll see you for one of the angels who sings My Boyfriend's Back. Mm-hmm. And talk about feeling your feelings. Princeton, I hung up the phone and I'll never forget. I sat on my couch. It was like 30 minutes, right? Let the tears flow, felt frustrated. And then I threw my hands up, literally. And I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to go in an audition. What the hell, right? I got to surrender. I did everything in my power. I'm still going to go in. So I go to that audition down on Wall Street on a rainy day. And I'm there with the casting director, Jeffrey McClatt, wonderful man. And we're talking about the show and we're having a great conversation. And he goes, okay, great. Would you like to sing the song first or read the scene for the angels? And everybody, I took a second and I felt that like little voice inside me, the quiet voice that we often ignore. And it was like, you have to do this. It feels too right. And before I knew it, I was speaking, saying, you know, Jeff, I got to be honest with you. I was really hoping to come in and read for the role of Mary Delgado. And I looked at him and I was like, oh my God, what's he going to say? And he looks back at me and he goes, I was just thinking the same thing. And I'm like, amazing. So that day I do the audition for the angels. I do the Mary Delgado scenes. And I left there that day, everybody, feeling so grateful. Why was I grateful? Because I didn't give a crap. I never thought I was going to get the role, but I wanted the opportunity. I wanted to know that when this film came out, I freaking had my chance. It wasn't meant to be, but I still did it.
Yeah.
So I left there that day, and I'll tell you all the truth. I found a church. I passed by a church and I went in to light a candle and say a prayer to thank God. Like, thank you for letting me just have this opportunity. 2 weeks later, I'm at my childhood home in New Jersey, down the street from where the whole storyline of Jersey Boys takes place. And it's my agent. And she goes, you're Mary Delgado in the movie. Clint Eastwood loves you. And I'm like, literally, just so you all know, I'm in my childhood bedroom right now. I came to my mom's house to record, so my dog wouldn't bother me. This was the room it happened in. I have chills.
I have chills.
I have freaking chills, Princeton. I didn't even realize it until right now. I was in this room that I grew up in, my little childhood bedroom. And I run out of here, and it was my mom, my dad, and my grandmother. We're about to leave for my brother's wedding. And they're all like, what's the matter? I'm hysterically crying. I'm like, I'm going to be in a movie. And my grandmother's like, I've been praying for this for years. She's 92 in her wheelchair. And I'm like, oh my God. So let me fast forward. First day on set, I will remind you all, have never been on a film set before. And here I am, major motion picture, Warner Brothers, Clint Eastwood, Oscar winning actor, director. And I'm here like, oh my God. And talk about surrendering and saying, you know what, Renee? You need to trust in your talent and leap. Clint Eastwood hired you. You got this. And he walks up to me the first day and he goes, I went around to all the different casts, but nobody was in your class. And then you came in and put yourself on tape and it was the icing on the cake. And I'm like, holy shit. Like crying, right? I'm like, I'm about to film my first scene. I can't cry. Every day that I would film Princeton, Clint and I would sit and eat lunch together and I would pick his brain. Clint, what was it like when you started acting? Clint, what does this camera shot mean? And I was like, he became a mentor to me because in my mind, and this is important for all of us to remember, when you have an opportunity like this in front of you to be a student, take it. And for myself, I'm a student of life, my friends. Every day I say I'm in the greatest school ever, and it's life. And every lesson that I can grab onto and journal about and keep in my heart, that helps me to evolve. And every day I evolved on that movie set, not because I was like acting. No, forget that. It was off when the camera was off. I was evolving by immersing myself with this man who was a legend, and not just a legend because of his accolades, but the human being he is so grounded and authentic that I wanted to learn from him. And here we are a month into the project. And this is the highlight of this story, my friends. I'm eating lunch again with Clint Eastwood and the executive producer. And they're talking about how Clint knew that he wanted me for the role when he saw me perform on Broadway. And I dropped my fork and I go, come again? And I go, do you guys want to hear a funny story? I couldn't even get an audition for the role of Mary Delgado. And they were like, wait, what do you mean? We requested you. I said, no. The only reason I auditioned is because I opened up my big mouth in the room and asked Jeff if I could. And they look at me and they're so confused. I'm confused. Lo and behold, we come to find out there was a casting associate, middle person who was casting a few films at once and just dropped the ball.
Wow.
So Princeton, just think about this. If I did not listen to my gut and communicate openly and honestly in that room that day, I could have missed my once in a lifetime opportunity. I could have been sitting in the movie theater watching Jersey Boys, walking through life, never knowing that Clint Eastwood was waiting for me to walk through that door. I would have never known that. But because I had that communication with myself where I could hear the voice of my soul speaking and I could communicate from there, I capitalized on the opportunity. And here I am now with this unbelievable story and experience in my life that I get to help other people with.
I'm glad you went into that story. I know we were talking about Dean in your book. We'll get to that. But you just said something so powerful. Well, you said many things that were powerful in the story, but I love how, intuitively, spiritually, you were able to tap into that space, sitting, on the couch, crying, not wondering why you weren't being selected, but you said something. You said, I threw my hands up and I surrendered. When whenever I teach mastery, I always say mastery is not about force. It's not about hard work. Mastery is about surrender. It's about stepping into the moment, owning your power, owning your potential, owning your purpose. See, your purpose had already called you. It had already positioned you. Your potential had already called you. It had already positioned you. Your power had already called you. It had already positioned you. And you didn't even realize that you had already been positioned. You were already the number one choice. But the universe said, nope. I'm going to see if you recognize it, realize it, and own it. Because if you're willing to own it, if you're willing to go that extra mile to put yourself out there, I'm going to give you something that you didn't even know was available. And it makes me think about this passage biblically that says that God is able to do exceeding and abundantly above anything we can think or ask. Exceedingly and abundantly above anything we can thank or ask. So I often say, God, our ceiling is God's floor, and so you got to this place in your life where you met this ceiling that really wasn't a ceiling at all. All you had to do was surrender and allow yourself to be carried into what was available for you. And that's such an amazing story, and then you go into the audition, you show up. Again, coming back to that phrase, show up. I always say, like Nike said, just do it.
That's it.
You went in there and you pulled an okey doke on them. They thought you were going to audition for one show, and you said, "Wait a minute, no, I'm here for this." Yep. And I think there's so many people in your life in life right now who are failing to show up and say, "This is what I'm here for. This is what I was born for." See, you think those challenges came to break you? You think they came to close doors in your face? No, every door that closes opens a new one. And it's just an opportunity for you to expand and own what you are. And you've done that in such an amazing way. And it's only shown throughout your life, but leading into that conversation you were speaking of with Dean, how did that conversation transition you to being on the stage of the freaking World Summit?
Yeah, it's so crazy. You said it. You said it, my friend. Sometimes we get up to a door and we're like, oh, what do? We hold ourselves back. Oh, maybe that person doesn't want to answer. Oh, I don't know. I'm not ready. Screw that. Mm-hmm. It's not about being ready. It's about taking imperfect action in spite of the fear. And like you said, and I just want to say this, and then I'll continue with Dean. In my book, I have a whole chapter on that film experience, and you're going to love it, Princeton, because I go into like details of like filming the actual movie. But I say sometimes what we dream doesn't hold a candle to what we achieve. And I want to say this to all of you. When I was a little girl dreaming of being on Broadway and this and that, yes, I thought about, film and TV, but I never like really thought about it. It was really Broadway. And so when I was on a movie set, all of a sudden I had this out of body experience, and I was like, oh my God, God has given me something that was beyond what I even dreamed of or prayed for, right? It was beyond what I thought I wanted. It was beyond like sitting here. I'm eating lunch with Clint Eastwood, Christopher Walken sitting next to me. We're all having a great conversation. They're asking me about Broadway. What's it like? And I'm like, what's happening? So it goes to show. And I love that you brought up that biblical passage, because it's so true. If we can learn to throw those hands up, my friends, throw them up physically, figuratively, physically, literally, life will unfold in ways beyond what you can imagine. So here I am conversating with Dean in front of 100,000 people. And at the end of the interview, I had contacted him, again, taking imperfect action, because that's what they taught us in KBB, right? Freaking take those opportunities. So one day I said, you know what? I'm going to send Dean a message. And I'm going to tell him that he needs to have me on his podcast, because I'm a KBB student and there are other KBB students who want to know what other KBB students who have graduated are doing. And I think it would be an awesome interview. And I sent him a message via Instagram. And after our interview live, he says, oh, and by the way, yeah, I'd love to have you on my podcast. And I'm like, oh my God. So here I am then on the podcast with Dean. We have this amazing conversation. And another week after that, Tony Robbins puts out another challenge, the Comeback Challenge. Mm-hmm. Now it's 300,000 people. Here I am again. I'm just showing up, you guys, just showing up, not doing anything fancy, not being anything beyond myself, but showing up. And every day I go live on that video camera and I get a flood of messages. Again, people saying like, how are you doing this? Oh my goodness, I need to learn how to get on video. And at the end of the entire challenge, Carissa Kuchis, his beautiful national speaker, says, and we want to honor one last person, because each day they would pick people out. On day 2, I got picked because of one of my videos. I won a program of Tony's. And she says, we want to call out one person who showed up and delivered so much value every day to the group, committed fully. Renee Marino, you just won 5 days to Tony Robbins' private resort in Fiji. And I was like, so again, and I want you to know this as well. That day, my husband and I and my dog, we were freaking out the day before, was my mom's birthday and a rainbow had come out. And I said to my mom, that's daddy. That's daddy showing us he's here. And the next day I won that challenge and I could like feel like the chills. I was like, that was my dad. Like, that's my dad showing me I'm doing the right thing, you know? And from there, Princeton, I just stayed active in the community, in the world of Dean and Tony, who I look to as mentors. And I would show up in the community, you know, every day, every week, go live and talk to the other members. And in October last year, I get a call from Dean's team and they're like, hey, Dean would like to know if you would co-host the first ever virtual world summit. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Yes. And again, I jumped in head first. I stood on this first ever virtual world stage where I got to introduce Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Jenna Kutcher, Pete Vargas, Pat Quinn, Russell Brunson, Trent Shelton, Brendan Bouchard. I mean, these freaking power players. And here I was, Princeton, again. Were there times that I was like, what the hell am I even doing? Absolutely. Did I do it anyway? Absolutely. Did I show up fully, whether I made a mistake or didn't? Sure did. Yeah. And that is how I met them. And that is how I got to be on stage. It was all from just being myself and showing up and talking just like I'm talking here to you, because at the end of the day, everybody, nobody's going to be a better you than you. So let's all stop trying to put a mask on top of us. Let's stop thinking we have to be like someone else or be more like this. Be so fully and completely yourselves that people cannot help but be attracted to you, but be pulled into your energy field. That's how it happened.
Oh my gosh. I love this, but I don't think I've ever told you this, but I remember when those challenges were going on and I remember watching you show up because all of the coaches that were working with Tony and Dean and helping put that stuff together, we were moderating that group. So we were able to see, messages or remove messages that didn't need to be there, the whole nine, we're in there. And so we're just observing people. And there was a couple of times where sitting amongst the team and everyone, I brought you up because I was like, man, this girl's on fire. Like, because at that point, I didn't really know you, but I recognized a gift, and how you were showing up, how you were communicating, how clear you were, how you stepped and owned your power. And I was like, man, like this girl is amazing. Like even during like the workshops and stuff like that, I was like, man, this girl is on fire. Like she's powerful. And we would talk about you all the time. Like Rocky adored you, and the whole team, we just loved you. So to see that happen, I remember messaging you that day, like you're on it. I'm like, girl, I'm loving this. I'm watching you bloom right now. And I get chills just thinking about it because, how often do you get to see someone fully step into their power, but not just step into their power, own it to such a degree that the momentum they create shifts everything around them at once. And that's what I got to witness with you, and to see you grow to this point. And now you finally finished your book. Talk to us a little bit about your book. Before we close out, because I really want everybody to really just grasp the totality of not only everything that you've had to grow through to get to this point, but just the stick-to-itiveness that you've had to have in order to move the needle this far. And now you're not only a powerful communication coach and speaker and guide, you're also a newly published author. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes. So since I was a little girl, the other thing I loved to do was write. And that was always a dream of mine. And last year, in the midst of everything else going on, I was like, I'm doing this. And I had started writing this book, everyone. I had the idea for a book on communication, not exactly what it is, but the idea back in 2017. And I started writing it backstage while I was on Broadway with Pretty Woman, the musical, in a wig, heels, costume. The crew guys would let me use their room and I would write in between scenes. So then when I became a communication coach, I was like, okay, this needs to happen. And one day I was out to dinner with a friend of mine and this family of 5 sits next to us. And the whole time, Princeton, it was parents, a teenager, and 2 young kids. All of them were on a digital device. The parents and teen on their cell phones and the 2 little kids on these video games. The entire meal, no one spoke. The food came, They still didn't speak. There was no connection. There was no love because everyone was immersed in this digital device. And I was like, boom, light bulb. This is what this book needs to be about. And the book is called Becoming a Master Communicator. And the subtitle is Balancing New School Technology with Old School Simplicity. And I came up with that title because I like to say I'm so old school at heart, like I still love, nothing to me is more effective than communicating face to face. Like if you and I were in a room together, Princeton, having coffee, I could hug you. Like nothing's more powerful than that, right? Then of course, now we have this beautiful gift of technology where we could do this. I still feel like I'm with you, but there's still a slight disconnect, right? We're behind screens. So how do we balance these two worlds so that digital technology doesn't take over our communication and turn us into almost sort of like robots, right? Where we don't have this old school way of connecting, but we know the time and place to connect virtually, and we know the time and place to put the devices down and have a direct conversation, or write a handwritten letter, or pick up the phone to our actual ear. And this book is so powerful. It's a guidebook. Each section has a reflection section where I have questions there for you to write in and journal about what you just read. That way the information's absorbed. And I just can't wait to get this out into the world. The book is now available for pre-order. And when my beautiful friends pre-order, they get 2 incredible bonuses. One is 21 ways to use communication to increase business opportunities. And number 2 is an introspective video journaling tool. The book already has been, you can see who's on the cover. I don't know if you could see his name. We got a beautiful endorsement by Mr. Clint Eastwood. We got a beautiful endorsement by Mr. Dean Graziosi, Russell Brunson, Barry Baumgardner, Pat Quinn, Brian Adams. So it's such an honor for me that these people that I look up to have read the book and have faith in the book. It means the world to me because Princeton, I truly put my entire heart and soul into this 250 pages. And I'm so excited because I know it in my gut, in my spirit, that this will help to change people's lives for the better, because everything starts with communication.
Yes.
Like really think about that. If we can master this skill in life and business, we become limitless.
Totally. 100%. Because we're always communicating, right? We're communicating in our thoughts. We're communicating in our actions, how we're moving our body. And I think that plays a major role in even how you were able to scale and grow within your career of acting and singing and dancing, because everything you do, every part of you is communicating something, and when we learn, it's like Tony says, where your focus goes, your energy flows, where you learn to create and utilize modalities that allowed you to fully express yourself. And I think this is an amazing book because it's going to show other people how to fully own themselves, how to completely learn how to communicate, because a lot of people are suffering. I mean, even if we look at depression and things like that, people are suffering because they don't know how to communicate what they're growing through or experiencing in their life. They don't know how to communicate, how they're processing through roadblocks, or, how they're dealing with the loss of a loved one, or how they're dealing with, losing a child. They don't know how, and these things are limiting their ability to show up in their lives, and people don't realize it. We think if we just stay to ourselves and just move, everything's going to work out and it's going to be okay. But the truth is, we as the human species, we were not designed to be isolated. We were not designed to shut down and shut off. We were designed to connect, to be open, to flow, to communicate. And the very essence of what we are is being disregarded. And so we need people like you. And I'm excited to share this book. Guys, you're listening to the Evolved Mastery Podcast, the Mastery 360 segment. And I've been interviewing my beautiful friend, Renee Marino. And we were just talking about her book. But listen, all of her details, all of her information is going to be in the description of the podcast. And so I want you guys to get connected with her. But before we end this session, Renee, how can they get in touch with you? For those who are listening, who are like, I don't want to wait for this podcast to come out. I want to know, how I can reach her now without reading the description. Renee, how can they reach you?
Yes. Well, First of all, it would be really great for you to go to becomingamastercommunicator.com. And that's where you'll be able to learn all about what this book is about, read these incredible endorsements, and you can pre-order the book and get those bonuses, because that is key. Because here's the truth. Again, I'm transparent, my friends. We want to show, especially in the US, Barnes and Noble, we got to let them know that this book is in high demand, so they carry it in every single one of their stores. So by you pre-ordering, that really helps me out, and it helps me to get the book out there. So I appreciate that. Also, find me on Instagram at I am Renee Marino, my website, reneemarino.com. And I'm not sure, Princeton, when you're airing this, but on September 27th through October 1st, I'm doing a completely free, you guys, 5-day virtual summit called the Becoming a Master Communicator Summit, where I have interviewed 6 crazy, amazing individuals: Chaz Palminteri, Oscar-nominated actor, Barry Baumgardner, Stuart K. Robinson, incredible people talking about how communication has been their greatest tool to success. So you can sign up for that at the communicatesummit.com. Really simple, communicatesummit.com. Come join us every day in your inbox. You'll get an email with one of the interviews. We have bonuses and so much more. So look into that. And I just can't thank you enough, Princeton. It is always such a blessing speaking with you. And I feel like I always get so much more than I'm able to give.
Oh man. Well, you're giving a lot. So I appreciate those flowers right there. And you know, it's my pleasure to have you on the podcast and to allow you to share yourself with the world. And guys, I want to just invite you, those links, everything she just mentioned, reach out to her, connect to her, because she is a powerful individual. And you guys know, I don't endorse anyone, that I don't have strong feelings about. And, she's one of what I consider the rare breed individuals in this world right now who, the world has been asking for without even realizing it's been asking for it, and so you're here for a time such as this, Renee, and I count it as an honor to walk alongside you as we impact the world and bring light to the world and continue to share our own evolving stories. All right, guys. With that being said, I want to thank everybody in podcast land for tuning in today. You guys know I'm bringing more guests to you, and I have so much more that I want to share with you all, but these guests that I'm bringing on the show, have traversed paths and taken time to grow and develop and to evolve into their state of being where they're creating impact in their personal world so that they can create impact in the world. And so I don't just bring them on so you guys can just hear them talk good and share their journey. I bring them on so that you guys can connect to them, because I understand that although my voice may reach millions of people, so will theirs. Their voice will reach people that my voice won't, and so I count it as an honor to be able to celebrate these coaches, these speakers, these agents of change, these rare breeds in the world with you all, so do your due diligence. Go connect with them, check out their social media, comment, let them know what you enjoyed about their story. Go check out what they have to offer as far as programs, because success leaves clues. If you got a lot out of this interview today and you're like, I wish I had that confidence, I wish I could push through. If you're a female and you're in a space where you've had to traverse through some very challenging moments and you haven't ever had a space to communicate, and maybe you don't know how to communicate it. And also men, if you're struggling, I know a lot of us men, we fail in the communication space so often, and our significant others are very, very free and very open in letting us know when we fail to communicate, but communication is also something that I've learned to master, in my own journey. And it's taken me so far as a father, as a significant other, as a leader, as a coach, as a mentor, as a guide, as an author. It's opened up so many doors. And so Renee, I think you're on to something here, love. And I'm excited to share you with the world. So guys, get connected with Renee. And also reach out to me. What are some topics you guys would like to hear more of on the Evolve Mastery podcast? And you guys know where to reach me. All the information you need is on the evolvedmastery.com website. And coming soon, my personal website is going to be back up, and that's the PrincetonClark.com website. It's under construction right now, but it'll be back up next week. And also, don't forget, my book, Awakening Your Inner Master, The Journey of Self-Mastery, can be found on Amazon, or you can go directly to the evolvedmastery.com website and connect there. But listen, guys, I appreciate your time. We love you guys. Renee, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Do you have any final words?
Just, I am so honored to be here with you. And I'm so grateful that the world has allowed us to connect. The universe has brought us together because we grow together. And communication, just like you said, it's oftentimes like breathing. We're not conscious of it until something goes awry. Yeah. And I want to bring this communication to the forefront of all of our conscious minds, because as we do together, as a world, as a community, we are just going to evolve as a world. And that's what it's about. So thank you for this platform. Thank you for all you do. And I'm just so grateful to have you in my life.
The feeling's mutual, love. All right, guys, we're getting out of here. Thank you for tuning into this segment of Mastery 360. I'm your host, Princeton Clark, and I appreciate you guys joining me for the Evolve Mastery podcast. Please leave a rating, leave a comment, let the world know what you think, leave a review, and also don't forget, if you're not subscribed, subscribe also, and I'll be talking to you guys real soon. Have a great one.